The Galactic Council's war chamber was filled with laughter. High-ranking officers from various alien species sat in their towering seats, their voices echoing through the Great Hall. At the center of the room, a holographic projection displayed a single human warship entering their territory. It was small compared to the massive fleets the Council commanded. "This is what the humans send." General Sorvath of the Kryn Empire chuckled, his four arms crossed over his armored chest. "A single warship against us." Ambassador Uralok, a pale-skinned Vahari, tapped his sharp claws against the table. "Perhaps they think this is enough. Maybe it is their finest technology," he mocked, making the others laugh even louder. Commander Krell, a reptilian from the Kordath Dominion, bared his fangs. "If this is their best, then humanity is weaker than we thought." A low beep interrupted the laughter. The hologram zoomed in on the warship. The sensors could not determine its weaponry. No known database had records of this exact model. Admiral Vork, a seasoned strategist from the Zeral Collective, narrowed his glowing yellow eyes. "Strange. This ship's energy signature is unreadable. No known configuration matches it." General Sorvath waved a dismissive hand. "It doesn't matter. One ship cannot win a war." The Council members agreed, laughing once again. They voted within minutes. Destroy the lone human warship immediately. The fleet moves. 30 warships from the Galactic Defense Armada were dispatched to intercept the lone human vessel. The alien fleet was vast and powerful, made up of destroyers, cruisers, and heavily armed battleships. Captain Velkir of the lead ship, Oblivion's Fang, smiled as he watched the human ship appear on his screen. It was just sitting there, motionless, like it wasn't even worried. "They must be frozen in fear," his weapons officer scoffed. Velkir leaned forward. "Send them a warning. Tell them to surrender." A communication signal was sent. No response. "Perhaps their radios are broken," one officer joked. Velkir grinned. "Then let's wake them up. Fire a warning shot." A powerful energy blast was launched toward the human ship. It should have impacted its hull. But instead, the blast vanished. The crew on Oblivion's Fang froze. "Where did it go?" the weapons officer stammered. Velkir's grin faded. "Scan the ship again." The scanners returned an error. Data unavailable. Unknown interference. Something was wrong. Fear creeps in. In the Galactic Council's war chamber, the laughter had stopped. The officers watched the live transmission in silence. The human warship had not moved, had not fired a single shot. And yet, the fleet's warning shot had disappeared. Admiral Vork tapped the table. "Replay the footage." The screen repeated the moment. Energy blast fired, energy blast gone. No shield activation, no energy absorption, just gone. "That's impossible," muttered Commander Krell. "What technology is this?" Uralok whispered, his claws tightening. The mood in the chamber had changed. It was no longer amusing. A second attempt. Back near the human ship, Captain Velkir ordered his fleet into attack formation. He wasn't going to play games anymore. "All ships, prepare for full assault. Fire on my command." The targeting systems locked on. The weapons charged. Then, the human warship moved, and it moved too fast. Velkir's eyes widened as the massive vessel vanished from his screen for a second, then reappeared right in front of them. How? Before he could finish his sentence, an explosion erupted behind him. One of the fleet's cruisers had been destroyed. Not damaged, not crippled. Gone. A silence fell over the bridge of Oblivion's Fang. The humans had not responded. They had not spoken. They had just erased a warship in an instant. Velkir swallowed hard. Maybe the Council had made a mistake. And for the first time in his life, he felt fear. A heavy silence fell over the Galactic Council's war chamber. The room, once filled with laughter, was now deadly quiet. The live transmission showed Oblivion's Fang and the remnants of the fleet floating in space, unmoving. The human warship had not spoken, not explained, not threatened. It had just destroyed a cruiser in an instant. Admiral Vork's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. What did we just witness? The council members exchanged uneasy glances. The fleet had superior numbers, yet the humans had acted first. They had responded to an attack without a single warning shot of their own. Commander Krell's tail flicked in agitation. They must have some kind of superweapon. No ship moves that fast. General Xorvath's voice was a low growl. No single warship should be able to erase another vessel like that. Ambassador Uralok exhaled slowly. Then we need to strike first, with everything we have. Vork turned back to the screen. His voice was hesitant. Are we sure that is wise? No one answered. Because for the first time in Galactic Council history, they were not sure. The fleet's response. On board Oblivion's Fang, Captain Velker's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the control panel. He had fought countless battles, but this was different. The human ship had not just fired a weapon. It had done something they didn't understand. Status on the fleet, he demanded. 3 ships offline, 1 completely erased, an officer reported, voice shaky. Velker clenched his jaw. He couldn't show weakness. Not now. All ships, open fire. The fleet's warships unleashed a storm of energy blasts, missiles, and plasma torpedoes. It was an overwhelming attack, something no single vessel could possibly withstand. And yet, the human ship moved. Not like any normal vessel. It flickered. One moment, it was in the direct line of fire. The next, it wasn't. Every single shot missed. Then, boom, another warship vanished. There was no explosion, no debris. It simply ceased to exist. Velker's heart pounded. What was this thing? The Council's panic. Back at the Galactic Council's war chamber, chaos erupted. This is impossible. General Xorvath slammed his fist on the table. What kind of technology are we dealing with? Admiral Vork's mind raced. He had studied human tactics before, but nothing like this had ever been recorded. They aren't using conventional weapons, he murmured. They're using something different. Ambassador Uralok hissed, his usual arrogance fading. Then we must do what we should have done from the start. We must surrender. The room went silent. Surrender to 1 ship. It was unthinkable. And yet, as they watched the unstoppable human vessel erase another warship from existence, it was starting to feel like the only option. A message received. Suddenly, for the first time since the battle began, a transmission came through. Velker stared at his screen. The human warship was hailing them. His throat felt dry as he hesitated, then pressed the button to answer. The screen flickered. A human appeared, dressed in a simple black uniform. Their expression was unreadable. Their voice was calm, almost casual. You attacked first, they said. Now you understand your mistake. Velker's breath caught in his throat, because in the human's eyes there was no fear, only cold certainty. Velker's mind raced as the human's voice echoed through the command deck. You attacked first. Now you understand your mistake. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a challenge. It was a fact. A cold shiver crawled down his spine. He was an experienced warrior, having fought countless battles across the stars, but he had never faced something like this. He cleared his throat, forcing himself to regain control. Identify yourself, he demanded. What is your purpose in our territory? The human on the screen tilted their head slightly, as if amused by the question. We are here because you made us come, the human said. Your council sent ships into human space. You broke the treaty first. We responded. Velker's breath hitched. The council broke the treaty. He hadn't been informed of this. We did not authorize an attack, he said, his voice steady but uncertain. If there was an incursion, it was a mistake. The human's expression didn't change. It was not a mistake. It was a test. And you failed. The fleet's fear. Across the remaining warships, officers and soldiers watched in silence. They had just unleashed their full firepower on the human vessel, and it had done nothing. No damage, no effect. And now, their commander was speaking to an enemy who showed no sign of concern. Some officers glanced at each other, their confidence cracking. Should we prepare a retreat? One whispered. Another officer clenched their fists. Retreat? From one ship? That's madness. But deep inside, they all knew. This wasn't just a ship, it was something else. And if they didn't act carefully, they might not live to regret it. The Council's desperation. In the war chamber, chaos erupted. General Xorvath's claws scraped against the table. They're lying. Humans are weak. We've studied them. They couldn't possibly develop a weapon this powerful. Ambassador Uralok hissed. And yet, our fleet is disappearing, ship by ship. Admiral Vork rubbed his temples, his mind racing. This wasn't just about the battle. If the humans had technology capable of this, then everything the Galactic Council believed was wrong. We need a ceasefire, he said finally. We need to open negotiations before we lose everything. Xorvath bared his fangs. You coward, we must strike harder. Vork turned to him, eyes cold. Strike with what? Against something we don't understand. Silence fell over the chamber. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council had to face the truth. They were no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. The humans' final words. Back on Oblivion's fang, Velker's breathing was slow and controlled. His mind screamed at him to retaliate, to do something. But deep down, he knew the truth. He had already lost. The human's voice was calm, steady. We do not seek war. We do not seek conquest. But we will not allow threats to exist unchallenged. Velker clenched his fists. What do you want? The human finally smiled. Tell your council this. This was your only warning. And then, the transmission cut off. The human ship flickered once and vanished, leaving behind only silence. Velker stood motionless, his mind frozen in the eerie silence left behind by the vanished human warship. His crew, once confident and proud warriors, now sat in stunned silence. Their weapons had failed. Their defenses had meant nothing. And now, the enemy was gone, not destroyed, not defeated, but simply vanished, as if toying with them. The realization spread like a virus among the fleet. Fear. It wasn't just about losing the battle. They had never stood a chance. The whispered truth. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than any official report. Dock workers in the outer systems whispered about a ghostly warship that shrugged off firepower like dust. Mercenary captains argued in dimly lit bars, debating how an entire fleet was humbled by one human vessel. Some laughed, refusing to believe. Others remained silent, recalling stories of human resilience, tales dismissed as myths. But among the powerful, the ones who knew the truth, they weren't laughing. The Council's panic. Back at the Galactic Council, an emergency meeting was called. We must prepare for retaliation, General Xorvath roared, his claws slamming against the table. If the humans think they can intimidate us, they are mistaken. Ambassador Uralok shook her head. They don't need to retaliate. They already won. Admiral Vork, his voice calm but firm, spoke next. We need diplomacy. We need to fix this before the humans decide that wiping us out is easier than negotiation. Silence filled the chamber. For the first time in history, the Council understood. They were not in control anymore. Velker's choice. Back aboard Oblivion's fang, Velker turned to his officers. We have one option, he said, his voice heavy. We return. We report. And we hope the Council listens. Sir, one of his lieutenants asked hesitantly, what if they don't? Velker sighed. He knew the arrogance of the Council. He knew how they thought of humans. and he knew what would come next. Then, he said quietly, we prepare for a war we cannot win. Velker's fleet limped back to the Galactic Council's homeworld, its ships battered, its warriors humiliated. The journey had been quiet, too quiet. No one spoke of what they had seen. No one dared to question how a single human warship had shattered their confidence. As they approached the capital, Velker prepared himself for the worst. The council was arrogant, proud, and unwilling to admit failure. They would not want to hear the truth. A room full of fools. The council chamber was a grand display of power, filled with the most influential beings in the galaxy. Massive holographic banners displayed past victories, while golden emblems of conquered species lined the walls. Velker stood before them, his uniform still scorched from battle, his posture rigid. The battle was lost before it began, he said, his voice steady. The human warship was unlike anything we have ever faced. Our weapons were useless. Our shields were meaningless. And then it simply disappeared. An elder counselor finished for him, smirking. How convenient. Laughter rippled through the room. Mocking. Dismissive. Velker clenched his fists. You think this is a joke? That warship could have annihilated us, and it didn't. It let us live. Perhaps humans are not as ruthless as you believe, a counselor mused. Velker's patience snapped. No, they didn't kill us because they didn't need to. They'd wanted us to return, to spread fear, to make you hesitate. Silence. A few members of the council shifted uncomfortably. Others remained impassive. Then, General Xorvath leaned forward, his reptilian eyes gleaming with contempt. Then we strike first. We send our fleets before they can prepare. We crush them before they become a real threat. Velker felt his stomach drop. This was exactly what the humans wanted. You don't understand, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. If one ship did this, what do you think will happen when you provoke an entire fleet? The council wasn't listening. Their decision had already been made. The message. Far beyond the council's reach, in the vast darkness of space, a single transmission was sent. Encoded. Secure. Human. The words were simple, yet terrifying. They did not listen. Deep within human space, Earth's high command received the message. They'd read it once. And then, they prepared for war. The council had made its decision, a preemptive strike. Across the galaxy, warships mobilized, fleets assembled, and invasion plans were drafted. The council believed in overwhelming force, crushed the humans before they could retaliate. But they had no idea what they were about to face. A silent watcher. On the edge of human space, a lone listening station detected an unusual surge of signals. Captain Elias Carter leaned forward, his sharp eyes scanning the screen. Incoming transmission, his officer reported. The message was from a deep-cover operative, an informant within the Galactic Council. Velker. Carter played the transmission. They did not listen. The Council is preparing for war. Expect invasion soon. The room fell into silence. The officers exchanged grim looks. Carter exhaled slowly, then reached for the secured console. His voice was calm, but there was a glint of steel in his eyes. Send the signal to High Command. Initiate Protocol Ragnarok. The storm breaks. The Galactic Council's war fleet surged forward, their massive dreadnoughts leading the charge. Thousands of ships, a force never before assembled, prepared to enter human territory. They expected resistance. They expected a desperate defense. They did not expect what came next. As the first wave entered human space, their sensors flickered. Disturbances, strange energy readings. Then, silence. Communications from the Vanguard fleet vanished. No distress calls, no last words, just emptiness. Admiral Xorvath snarled, "Where is my fleet?" Then, alarms blared. A single human battleship materialized from the void. Not hiding, not running, waiting. Its weapons glowed with an eerie hum. The ship's name flickered on their scanners. SS Retribution. A message broadcast across all council channels, spoken in a calm, human voice. You should have listened. The war had begun. The Galactic Council's war fleet had been unstoppable. Until now, the HSS Retribution, the lone human warship, had faced their armada without hesitation, and it had not fallen. What the Council did not know was that this was only the beginning. The first strike. Admiral Sorvath watched in shock as the Retribution fired its first volley. Beams of energy sliced through the void, striking 3 Council dreadnoughts. Shields collapsed instantly, as if they weren't even there. The ships exploded in bright flashes of fire and debris. 3 warships. Gone. In seconds. Panic erupted in the Council fleet. Their formations broke. This is impossible, one officer shouted. Sorvath clenched his claws. Regroup. Overwhelm it with numbers. The remaining ships opened fire. A rain of plasma, missiles, and laser beams surged toward the Retribution, enough firepower to reduce a planet to dust. And yet, none of it landed. The human warship blinked out of existence, dodging the assault with unnatural speed. It reappeared behind the Council fleet, right in their blind spot. A second volley. 5 more ships obliterated. 1 ship, destroying an armada. This was not a battle. This was a massacre. The true power of humanity. Light years away, on Earth, the Supreme Commander watched. Admiral Carter stood before the war room, his face impassive. The Council made their choice. They wanted war. He turned to his officers. Now we give them one. Across human space, fleets launched. Hundreds of ships, thousands of weapons. Humanity had been quiet for centuries. Underestimated, ignored. Now, the galaxy would learn why humans should never be provoked. The final moments. Admiral Sorvath could hardly believe his sensors. A second human fleet was approaching. This time, it was not 1 warship. It was hundreds. His fleet was already in chaos. Their communications were jammed. Their weapons were useless. Their morale was shattered. A final message appeared on his screen. A human admiral, standing with his arms behind his back. Cold, unforgiving. This is your only warning. Surrender or be erased. Sorvath looked around. His warships were already retreating. The great invasion of Earth had become a disaster, a slaughter. With trembling hands, he sent a message back. We surrender. Epilogue. The legend begins. The Council fell. The war was over before it had even begun. The name HSS Retribution became legend, the ship that ended an empire. And across the galaxy, one truth was clear. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not to be underestimated, and if anyone dared challenge them again, they would not be so merciful.